Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked, the Hidden Gems author podcast, which Craig Touch and myself, Roland Hume, chat some of the interesting figures and leading lights of this crazy industry of writing and self-publishing. And today, I am delighted to welcome a very, very special guest. She is Lauren Carter Reilly, who is somebody I've been following on Instagram for absolutely years. She is a Renaissance woman. You started, well, I don't know, you'll have to tell us all about yourself. But Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, we're delighted to have you. We've got so much to talk about. But before we begin, we wouldn't be here without the man himself, Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems. How are you doing today, Craig?
Doing great. Thanks, Roland, and thanks for joining us, Lauren. I keep hearing all about you from Roland and how you're all over TikTok and Instagram and all, doing all sorts of things to promote yourself. So, why don't you tell us a bit about what you write and how you get started and what you do on social, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So when it comes to writing, I have a series that is currently out that has 2 books in it. It's called The Wonderful Lady B. It is a Gothic horror historical fiction series. It deals a lot with different kind of mythologies from different cultures, deals a lot with archetypes of different cultures and mythology, mainly around women. Lots of historical events that happen. It flashes back and forth between events going up from the Victorian era to 1982. And it concerns the family of a woman who disappeared about 100 years ago. And then she comes back and she wants to explain why she's still here and how much she knows about herself and how much she doesn't know. And that's sort of the one series that I have out. And then hopefully in June, I'll have my first kind of romantic comedy novel coming out that's called In This Fair Chase. And it's stuff that I've actually experienced before. It's about a cast of actors that are doing Midsummer Night's Dream in a big production in Manhattan and all the behind the scenes stuff that happens, because that's where most of the drama happens if you've ever worked in theater.
And because you are a classically trained theatre actress.
Yes, I am. I have a bachelor's in fine arts with theater performance with a focus in classical. And then I did a semester at Lambda where I did another classical, mainly Shakespearean Jacobean intensive. And that was really good. And then I worked in New York and I did a lot of background. And then COVID happened and I sort of my dad said I left the cult, is how he describes it. But I stepped away from mainstream stuff and now I do one character series mainly on TikTok. So I've got a couple popular series on there that I also have on YouTube.
And that's how, I can't remember. I think our paths crossed because of some photographer mutuals or something, but it's all the stuff that you've been doing with your characters that I think is so amazing. Like Sunday O'Riordan, for example.
Yes.
You do
Sunday
these little
O'Riordan, yeah.
with characters and you act out scenes and you're entirely on your own, but they are amazing.
Thank you.
That's what I moved to America. I love American culture. It's so interesting to see, like, everyone in the UK thinks maybe Americans like ubiquitous if they don't come from Texas, but here we go. You're showing like this very colorful woman who is part of an Irish mafia family from Philadelphia, and then suddenly you're playing a woman who's from down south, and then you've got all your stuff you made with Lady B, and you have these wonderful tiny little videos that are like character studies that get you really excited about stuff. And I think that's, for me, that's where I was first interested in like The Wonderful Lady B. And that's why I'm really excited about your rom-com that's coming out, because you can tell you have a very rare and deep understanding of character. And through your little videos, you can like bring them to life and make people excited for the stories you're writing.
Well, for me, I always was a writer. During COVID, I had to move back in with my parents, which I think a lot of people had to do. And I was going through stuff that I had done in high school. And my focus was always theater. I didn't have time for anything else. I didn't do sports. I didn't do visual arts. I wanted to do other things, but I was always, I think as an actor, you get tied into the idea of like the work, and you have to do the work. Otherwise, you're kind of cheating on your passion, which is a really toxic way of thinking about it. But I think that's a trap a lot of actors get into. But I was always writing. And so when my industry just came to a standstill and I was back in my childhood bedroom having a breakdown like every other day, I started going through stuff that my parents had kept. And they were like, hey, remember when you used to do this and you didn't take it very seriously? would you ever think about going back and maybe looking at this stuff? And then I found something that I had written. I was a sophomore in high school, and I wrote something that really, I think, was the precursor to The Wonderful Lady B, because I liked the research portion a lot. I loved researching, whether it's acting or whether it's writing. I love hyperfixating on something and staying up until like 2 a.m. and ending up on a different side of the internet than I started on. And I've always been interested in kind of Gothic literature, Gothic horror. I think, I took a whole class in college about Victorian literature, and it's sort of spiraled off from there. And now it's 2 books, and the third hopefully comes out in 2026. And that's just sort of where it all started, but it really had to take my life falling apart in order to realize that I was capable of doing other stuff as a creative.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Were you doing the videos on TikTok? Were you doing those before you wrote, or did that come at the same time?
So I moved to Salem, Massachusetts during COVID, after saving and like planning my whole life to go to New York, and it wasn't going to happen. I think that my parents were very hesitant to let me go back into the industry, also at like the epicenter of the pandemic. So I was originally going to be Boston because I have family up here. Then I moved to Salem because everything sort of lined up, and I was everybody was getting on TikTok because we didn't have any other way to communicate with each other, and we were all inside, and there was no going and meeting new people, and there was no going out. And I was a bit of a snob about the whole thing, and I was like, I'm never going to get on TikTok. That's just so base and low, and I'm a high cultured artist, and I don't need to do that sort of thing. Inevitably got on it just because I felt like I was missing out a lot. And I followed friends of mine that were already on there, and I followed a lot of people that were photographers and creatives and costume designers. And that was the stuff that I really felt pulled towards. And you could only do a minute back then. You got 60 seconds, and now you can make like a half an hour long video, but it was only 60 seconds. And you were seeing people with editing and music and visuals making these really fun little snippets of something, and be like, wait, I want to read that book. I want to watch that movie. I want to watch that TV show. And then it was, well, what can I make in 60 seconds? What ability do I have to do that? And then it sort of hit and took off. And I was getting comments from people being like, if this is a book, I would read it. If this were a book, I would buy it. If this was this, I would watch it. And I wrote the first book, which is, both of them are more novellas. They're kind of shorter books, but I wrote the first one with no intention of showing it to anybody ever, because I was so embarrassed. I just didn't put my work out there. And the one time that I did as a child, I was mocked by a room full of adults for it. Yeah, 8th grade at my middle school graduation. One of my teachers took a poem that I had written for a class without my permission and read it in front of the entire graduation. And it was something very private.
Yikes.
And I was horrified, because that was like a really intimate thing that I had written for a class with no intention of sharing. And she was like, oh, Lauren's just so talented. It's so fun. And so as a child, I learned that, like, oh, sharing your ideas is not safe because somebody will take them and you don't get control over who sees them. So I think that was sort of a contributing factor to me not really wanting to write. But then I had everybody around me going, you should do something with this. You have to do something with this. And self-publishing has become such a huge industry, and it's next to impossible to get a traditional publishing deal. Even now, I was just talking to a potential publisher, and they were like, well, we want to see how it does self-publish first, and then maybe we'll take it. And I'm like, oh, so I have to do all the work first and put my own money into it. And then maybe you'll throw me a bone if it does.
And then take all the money for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And then be like, look at this amazing, talented artist that we found and, plucked from the depths of nowhere. But yeah, I think self-publishing has its, benefits and its perils. And I was like Googling, how do you build a website? How do you copyright? How do you, how do you format? And I found friends of mine that do all those things. I found a friend of mine, Natalie, to help me with my website. Her company that she works for now handles all of my shipping and stuff and things like that. I have a copyright and trademark attorney. I have a printer. They're both named Michael, which gets really confusing sending emails. And then I had, my dad has owned a small business for like 30 years and really gave me the talk about like, you're a small business now. You can make the best thing in the world, but if nobody else knows that it's out there, you're not going to sell anything. So you really have to be kind of obnoxious about it. And I think the last couple of years I've discovered that it is really hard because a lot of creatives are introverts naturally. We only want to I was talking to a photographer yesterday. She's like, I only want to take photos. I don't want to like market and put out calls for models. And I don't want to build my website. I want to take photos and have that experience with people. I'm like, I know, but you have to do the other thing because that's the economy that we live in. Like, no one's going to do it for you, which is really frustrating, but also kind of freeing.
As they always say, like this. Oh, sorry. You go ahead, Craig.
No, I was gonna. You can, but then you have to hire those people, which is also, and then you manage those people, which is also work, right? And if you haven't done it yet, and you don't have the income coming in, then you have to pay for those things, and that's why self-publishing. You're right. We've said that many times. It's like you're a small business now, and you have to do all those things, and then you have to sometimes make those hard decisions about what are you really not suited for.
Yeah, like what do I have to spend money on versus like what am I capable of doing on my own?
Right. Even though I don't like it, I can do it, and then maybe if you make enough money, you can hire for
and then I can have somebody else deal with it and I can go do the thing that I would much rather be doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, am I right in saying The Wonderful Lady B, you sell direct to readers? It isn't available on Amazon at the moment, is it?
I've chosen to stay off of Amazon. At the beginning of the year, because it's so easy. Amazon makes it so easy for writers and voice actors as well. You hit a button. You hit a button and suddenly your content is available to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. But for me, every time that I get that, oh, maybe I should just put it on Amazon, and Amazon is a huge seller for a lot of people, and you get your numbers go up, and then it's all linked into Kindle. It's all linked into Goodreads. It's all this big ball of stuff that I could have access to. I'm just going to do it. And then morally something will happen. And I think that it's the easy thing to do, but for now I've chosen to stay off of Amazon. I've chosen to stay off of Audible as well, especially because they're starting to gravitate towards using more AI, and I can't support that. And luckily, I'm financially stable enough to make that decision. But I don't judge anybody that says like, hey, I have a book, I really want to publish it, I want to get it out there, I'm going to go to Amazon. But for now, I don't want to. I don't have to, but they don't make it easy. Again, nobody makes it easy for you as a creative and a writer. And why wouldn't you take the easiest route when you have to do everything by yourself?
Well, I think that a lot of authors traditionally, that's the only way that they can find their audience, right? Amazon or any of the bookstores have that built-in audience. People know if they want a book, they go to Amazon, they find it, right?
Right.
If you don't, then it's almost impossible unless you have that platform already, which you've built through TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
And stuff. I assume that's where all your sales are pretty much coming from.
Oh, this winter was awful because even though TikTok went down for only a few hours, I got locked out of my account.
Oof.
So because I was with friends that weekend, and we all kind of did the countdown of, okay, 11 o'clock tonight it's going to happen, and I made peace with it, and I told everybody where to find me, and I said, you know what, this will be one less distraction for me. I'll take it off my phone because I'm not going to be able to go in there anyway. And then suddenly everybody's saying, oh, TikTok's back up, but it wasn't available in the US, so I couldn't re-download it.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
I could get into my account from my laptop, but there was no quick funky little edit, quick funky little book quote, quick like, hey guys, it was a whole other thing I had to do. And I think that happened to a lot of people. And it was, that was the winter's always hard because people aren't spending a lot of money anyway. But yeah, that was definitely I better work on the thing that I'm supposed to put out later this year because hopefully it comes back and I can get back into it. And the day that I could, I was like, oh, thank God.
Well, I am a complete convert to direct sales and moving away from Amazon. I was very successful on Amazon and sold like 70,000 copies of my books, but now direct sales is where I'm at, just because you have so much more control over it. And I think it's so interesting. The Wonderful Lady B is something that is it's not something that you can easily fit into any particular genre. It doesn't just like slot in there, does it? Because it's like a romantic horror, and I'm not sure where I was.
No, it is romantic horror, and I think that that's now becoming more popular.
Yeah.
But I think another difficult part about marketing, especially in self-publishing, is you have to kind of treat your audience like they're stupid. And I don't like to do that. I don't want to break down, like, it's like, I call it baby birding, where like you break your book down into easily digestible little pieces and then you spit it into their mouth. And, you know, it's supposed to, they go in knowing what it is. And I don't like that. I don't want to have all of these different categories that break down what my book is. And then you kind of know what it's about before you even read it. And you don't really get the gut punch moments, and you don't really get the like philosophical, oh, I have to think about that moment. Because you can market through trope, you can market through genre, you can market through a lot of different categories. But when the more categories you kind of put out, I feel like that takes away the excitement of reading a new book. It's like ordering it's like ordering a coffee. Like, you know what your coffee order is. You know what kind of milk you like, you know what kind of sweetener, you know if you like, flavoring or not. And it's the same, I feel like, sometimes with books, where you can go in, especially when it comes to marketing to women. There's so many tropes, and it's like, I want a trope where it's, enemies to lovers is the most obvious one. And sometimes it's like, this isn't enemies to lovers, they just fucking hate each other. And I'm not enjoying myself, like, but why? But it's under enemies to lovers because that's a really popular trope and that's what sells.
Yeah.
Romantasy is another one. What kind of romantasy are we talking? Fairies, mermaids, werewolves, elves? What is it? But then you break it down even further, and then it's like, oh, I don't like the fact that I know what this is. There's no mystery of like, I met a creature in the woods, or it's the beast. Like, it's like Beauty and the Beast. You don't really know at first why he's a beast, and then you find out, and then you're like, oh, I'm compelled, I'm interested, I want to know how we got here and what's the ending. And it's hard because you want to like make it accessible, but also you don't want to, like, I don't like to treat my audience like they're stupid, because a lot of them aren't.
That's an interesting one, because I think absolutely there are romance readers who, they have like, okay, I want a reverse harem with a werewolf set in modern day New York with a billionaire.
You're ordering a pizza.
Yeah. I like that.
You can say like, I want this size of pizza, I want this on the pizza, I want the consistency of the pizza to be this. And then, yes, you got what you wanted, but that's ordering a pizza. That's not like sitting down with a book and really, as an author, I don't want to make it easy for everybody, because then it's not fun, because it's not fun for me when I go in and I'm like, oh, this is, you can see who the killer is immediately, or where it's going.
Now, the Wonderful Lady P is one thing, and then your next book that you're working on now, In This Fair Chase, which is the one I'm really excited about, because I'm a big romance reader. You seem to have taken a different approach, a more traditional approach towards that as a book.
Yeah, I wrote 2 horror books, one after the other. I wrote 2 books in 2 years, and I was like, I'm struggling with the third one. And maybe it's just because I need to give that part of my brain a rest, and also it's, what else can I do? Because I don't want to just be a horror author. I want to see if there's other stuff that I'm capable of doing. And there are other genres that I personally like that I want to explore more. And I write for it's a pinup magazine out of Philadelphia. It's called Sought. Cool. Yes. Yeah. And when that first started, Nathan, who runs it, was like, I need articles. He's like, I have more than enough naked people, but I don't have anything to put in between the pictorials. And I love telling the story of In This Fair Chase, because it started with, that was the first short story I ever wrote for Sought. It was just a little thing, and I sent it in. I got like a little bit amount of money from Nathan, because they were just starting the magazine, and it came out in the summerly quarter, and I'd gone on like my first vacation since COVID. I got 3 copies of it. I sent one to 2 friends of mine, and then I sent one to my parents because I'm really bad at lying to them. So I didn't look at the magazine, and I had talked to the illustrator, who's really, really nice. And she was like, "What do you want?" And I said, "I think I want like something creepy, Aubrey Beardsley, kind of dark ink, creepy satyr sort of, but like in a sexy way." And my mom calls me and she goes, "Have you opened the magazine? Have you looked at the illustration for it? Were you in charge of that?" And I said, "Well, I gave her direction." My mom goes, "Okay, maybe look in the magazine." And I open it up, and the first thing I see is a satyr with just the like a baby arm of an erection. And I was like, "Ah!" But I'm like, she did what I mean, the line work is great. But I just sat with that for a while, and I went back over it, and I was like, I want to write something maybe a little lighter, maybe something with other stuff that I know about, not just history. Maybe I want to do something with being in the industry, because I was for a really long time, and you meet these insane people. And you're also spending a lot of time on set together where you can't have your phone, you can't talk to anybody. You're working on these projects, so you get really close incredibly quick, and you have these very unhealthy, intimate relationships with people. And I'm like, that's fun. And I have a background in theater, so I wrote, kind of about stuff that I had experienced, which is, typecasting and not getting these roles and being kind of overqualified sometimes, and dealing with gross people, but also meeting people that are really just sort of hungry for human connection, which I think we all are. And that's the one thing also about live theater is you're going to watch people in real time have emotional connections. And it's way more effective than maybe like going to a film. So
Absolutely.
yeah. And it was, there's definitely stuff. I studied Shakespeare super intensively. And Midsummer Night's Dream, I was Helena, the main character of In This Fair Chase is cast as Helena, and I was Helena during like the worst summer of my life. And sometimes the only thing that got me out of bed was, oh God, I have to go to rehearsal. If I don't, Rosie's gonna yell at me. I'm like,
oh, that's one
yeah.
because I think I was legitimately, I saw In This Fair Chase, and I kind of got excited about it. And I've always said there are like 4 different things that will sell your book, and the more of them you have. And I think what works with In This Fair Chase is it's a romance, and to me it ticks all the boxes. It's like, I love Shakespeare, I love romance, everything that you're saying, the conflict between the characters sounds great. And then I've been following you for years on social media, so it's sort of the one-sided relationship you have with the author. It's like, I like this author and they're good, and their book that they have seems to tick all the boxes, and that like makes it a very strong offering, which I think is great. And I was just wondering how you are approaching publishing In This Fair Chase differently to how you went about with The Wonderful Lady B. I mean, are you going to go Amazon this time because it's a romance book, which would perhaps be successful there?
I think so. I had an offer from a publisher who wanted to do In This Fair Chase, and it was, I'm not going to say who, but I had an offer from a publisher, and they were like, "Hey, we really love this." And I said, "Okay, great." And at first it was, "Well, we want you to self-publish. We want to see how the numbers do, and then we would give you a traditional publishing deal in 2026. And I said, "Great." And I did all the final edits. I got my cover art done. I always have friends that do my cover art. And so my friend Griff did my cover art this time. And I had my meeting about doing pre-orders, which I've never done before. I normally wait until everything is literally in the house so I can drop it and then immediately start running to the post office. But I got an email back from this publisher, and they were like, "Hey, we're not really okay with you self-publishing anymore. Can you sit on this for a year?
Oh my God.
And then we'll publish in 2026. And I was like, so I timed this for summer because everyone's in the airport and on the train and on boats and in the car. And like, you want people to buy your little airport book, and you want people to have something to take on vacation. And it was like, I marketed this as a beach read. And they're like, "Hey girl, actually, we're not okay with that anymore. So you can still self-publish. We're just not interested anymore." And I went, done,
Good for you.
I'm not going to sit for a year and potentially lose a lot of profit and not be able to make my money back, and also make everybody else who works with me sit on their hands. And I think a lot of I've heard stories about publishers that are not major ones that are sort of iffy, and then people get screwed over. And then I'm like, I can do this on myself, on my own. I've already done it. So I think the only thing different is that I'm going to try to do pre-orders this time, but I'm still independently owned. You know, I think, again, every single time I get the Amazon bug, something else happens that just confirms that what I'm doing is the right thing for me. And if that changes, great. And if not, then I've done this twice already. I know what needs to happen. I know how long it takes. I know, you know, who's going to watch what I market in different ways. So I'm not freaked out about it. And everybody that's read it so far has been like, no, this is a good one. This is potentially going to be something that I do publish on my own. And then maybe an even bigger publisher is like, hey, we love this. Because nobody wants to like just read a manuscript that you send in anymore. They have to like have an entire like Excel spreadsheet of how well you're doing.
Yeah, they don't want to take any risk anymore. I think it's interesting because very few people go the route of not putting it on Amazon or even some of the other sites, right? So how is it that you're finding your readers? How are you selling the book? Is it exclusively from followers on social media? Are you advertising on Facebook, or how are you finding all these people?
So I work with a couple. I'm in Massachusetts. So this time in this fair chase, I work with a group called Creative Collective, and they kind of offer you outreach and support as an independent artist, and they do it for people who are companies, people who are self-employed. They do it for publishers, for artists, for studios, for companies. So I've got a much bigger reach with them. And then I also have my friends at Nocturne. My friend owns a store in Salem. I sell my books out of her store. There's a huge following that they also have. It's been mostly organic that I've sold, like I've had all of my sales. And it's really rewarding, but it is also really stressful sometimes because there are just months where I don't hit the quota that I would like. And I've gotten a lot more financially responsible because of it. And, you know, a lot of what I make goes back into the business, but it's been mostly organic. And I think also there's an appeal now, especially with the climate that we're in, where if you have something that is sort of exclusive, it's almost like a luxury, and it's got that different feel. And I think a lot of consumers like that feeling of, oh, this is a new thing. It's not on Amazon. And I have to know somebody who knows somebody to go find it. Or, oh, I found this on my own. And it seems like a higher end item, even if it isn't.
Right. Well, you say like a shop in Salem, Nocturne, but it's like the shop, really. In some ways, it's like the cool, witchy. And so like to have your book there, that's really cool.
Kim has put her heart and soul into that store. It's 3 years old now. I am in there with the other thing I love that they do is in their library, they have a lot of other local authors. So it's me, it's like Freddie Cloche, it's Cody Crowley, it's Emmett Mays. All of us are horror writers. And Cody actually is with Hyperion and Disney. So her book came out last year, Here Lies a Vengeful Bitch, which was really successful. But it's fun to like go into the store and see, oh, Cody's like my manager, but her book is next to mine. And maybe somebody who goes in for her book sees the other books, or sees, you know, Emmett's book In the Belly, which is like a haunted whaler story, or Freddie's book, which is about like a coven of teenagers in the 90s, and picks that up. And it's not necessarily a big publisher that's giving them all the help and the hype, but they come in for something and they leave with another thing. And the marketing that Kim does is amazing. And it's like she's not on my team, but she kind of is.
So
I think that it's interesting because it's not on any of the sites. Like you don't even have, or maybe you do somewhere. You don't. It seems like you don't have like even a place where people could read reviews of it. And so really, you know, it's almost like really word of mouth. You know, you really.
Well, I have Goodreads. I'm on Goodreads,
oh, okay, so on Goodreads,
and then I'm on Story something. That's another one that I I can't remember what it's called. It's like Storyboard, Story Tech or something like that. There's another reviewer, but it's, my reviews are good, I have to say. I'm perfectly happy with them. I'm not one of those people that gets like a 3.7 and has a meltdown. And I also don't, as an author, I have to say, don't go on Goodreads and read the reviews. Don't read reviews of your own book, because it's going to make you spiral. And also, it's not a space for you. It's a space for readers.
That's a very insightful thing to say.
I heard somebody say it once, and it's just sat in my mind. And I was like, you know what? Like, it is. I once compared it to like sending your kid off to college, where you write your book and it's your baby and you put so much into it and you try to make it good. And then when you hit publish or you hit available, it's going to go out into the world, and you have to believe that all the work that you've put into it is going to make it a good thing. And people are going to meet it and interact with it and have different experiences with it. And you have to like give up a little bit of control, because the other great thing about being on TikTok is you get to see what happens when people are not separated from the fact that they're not separated from their work. And there's whole YouTube channels dedicated to authors behaving badly. And there's whole like streams of people who, when they write and what they put out it's not proofread, it's not peer reviewed, it's not, and then seeing what happens when you don't take criticism is really insightful, because you could be having an absolute meltdown over something that somebody said, and then you get to see how someone else reacted and you go, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. You never want to reply.
Or if you have a meltdown, it's like to your friends over drinks, or like to your partner.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've cautioned authors many times about replying.
Step away from the
individual.
Oh yeah, because like you'll get bad reviews and you'll have a bad day, and
you can't win. You can't win.
You can't. The only way to win is to not play the game.
Yeah. If you write something, you're never gonna, that author can't take criticism, or it doesn't matter what you write, people will look at it.
Yeah, somebody's gonna say something, and you kind of have to like be this mysterious being on the hill that like nobody knows how you're feeling, when in reality you're in tears to somebody on the phone being like, and they didn't like it.
But I mean, your reviews are really good. I mean, I'm looking at them. I don't want to tell you because you don't want to know, but like, there's nothing to be worried about from what I can see on Goodreads. So I mean, clearly, it is something that people like. It's not something that you have to be in tears about, for sure. Have you ever thought about doing like, because you were talking about how it's like you almost think about it as like this unique thing because you can only get it in certain places. Have you thought about doing special edition, leather bound cover? People do these things, especially with like a Kickstarter, where people generate the funds and then they put out like a really fancy version, especially if you're only selling it in a couple places or direct.
Yeah, I think that if this next one does really well, I might take some of that money and put it towards there is actually a bookbinding company in Salem where I would employ them to help me make maybe like a couple of special copies of The Wonderful Lady B, something really cool. And that's the other thing. Like, I want to give other people who are creatives opportunities to like work on projects. And like, they're actually my neighbors. The bookbinding couple, they're really great. And so I would love to be able to go to them and be like, hey, can we get like 20 leather bound copies of volume 1 and 2, maybe in the same one? That would be cool. Yeah, something like that, hopefully.
So tell me about the writing process. So, I mean, the writing process for The Wonderful Lady B and the writing process for In This Fair Chase must be very different.
Oh, yeah. I think with The Wonderful Lady B, because some of it is written kind of prose poetry style, it's more about the construction of it and how, there's a bunch of sections that are letters written back and forth between the characters. So I have to kind of bounce a little bit more back and forth between how does this character write and what language are they using? Because what time are we in? Does this country exist? Is, their language different because English is not their first language? Is, the way that they notice things different? So there's a lot of that. And then I think with In This Fair Chase, it's all first
person.
Yeah, it's all first person. So it was more making sure that, things are consistent, and when did we go here, and how many months is it between, start of production versus when we're at opening night, and have we had enough interactions that, like, I as an author feel like they've reached a point where there is romantic interest. And it's a more intimate thing, I think, with in this fair chase, because it's only one person and their opinions, but also a lot of other stuff is happening. So you have to think, okay, how would they find out this information? Are they talking to somebody? Did they hear something? Did they overhear something? Did someone leave a post-it out? Like, is someone's phone not covered? Whereas with The Wonderful Lady B, it's okay, I look like a serial killer. Like, I have the red yarn, and I'm like, all right, 1912, this happened. And then 1914, this happened. And then was there a train here? And then when did this government take over? And, would they have been calling it this thing if this country has only existed for a year, technically? And what kind of language is being used that is really bad is the other, like, thing, because there's lots of slurs in The Wonderful Lady B that we don't use anymore, but that was the common way that you referred to certain people. And with, in this fair chase, it's all taking place in the modern era, but am I writing characters like, okay, how homophobic is this one character? And does he sound as homophobic, or is this stuff that you would hear somebody saying on the bus and you would just kind of leave it alone?
That's really interesting. I mean, they're very different types. The Wonderful Lady B, it's kind of almost like Bram Stoker's Dracula with all the letters and things like this. Whereas,
yes, that was a major inspiration for it.
That's in this fair chase. Yes, it's all first person. And how are you a plotter or a pantser? And, like, did you, like, study how stories are told and the beats of a romance story, or did you just kind of, like, wing it?
I've read, like, I've read a lot of books that my mom had in her, like, in our house growing up. I kind of ended up just finding them. Now I own a collection of vintage Jackie Collins books. And so I'd read those, but I was also like, I think if you study something too much, you tend to kind of just copy what you've studied, because you're like, there's a formula and this works and it's A, B, C. And there are plot points that, you do have to get from A to B to C to D and whatever. But I also like being surprised in the process. There were times that, your characters don't do what you want them to do, and maybe you're not driving the bus all the time. But if you try to force it, it doesn't have that nice organic feeling of where you're like, okay, so this didn't work, but where is it going? And I'll put this to the side. I can come back to it. And then I'm going to do this. Oh, that works really well. And then it all gets tied up neatly in the end.
So are you like I go to the coffee shop and write? Do you have, like, a set time? Do you just wing it?
I think, well, with work, it's a little difficult. I mean, I do have, like, another job, so I don't have the luxury of, like, strolling in the garden and then going and writing. So I will write anywhere, and I have to freehand a lot of stuff. So I'm a notebook hoarder, and it'll happen. I'll be on the train going to work. I'll be on my lunch break. I have my laptop for work anyway, so I might put down a few things, and then I'll come home. And then it's sometimes I have 3 a.m. days where I look up and it's 3 a.m. and I have to wake up at 8. And I hate those days, but it just sort of happens. And the rhythm of my life with so many other projects, sometimes I don't write for weeks on end, and it's really frustrating because I have other things that need time and energy, and I can't be getting, this many hours of writing done that somebody recommended. I have to be a human being. But then it'll all come out. But then I have to take a break because I've stayed up until 3 a.m. for 3 days in a row, and I'm like a noodle person, and I can't hold a conversation, and I can't focus on other things that I just need to do. So it's sporadic, but it always ends up in the timeline that I want it to be.
Yeah, I like that. You're finding harmony rather than balance.
Yeah, it's just going to happen when it happens, And the more you try to force it, you're going to look back at that work and go, "Oh, I don't like this."
So do you have a different plan for selling this? One of the issues authors find when they write in different genres, and this is, going horror to romance, is you're not always your fans of one aren't necessarily readers of the other.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to almost start from scratch, right? It's like, yeah, you might be able to get some of those horror readers to read the romance, but a lot of them are like, I'm not a romance reader. So you almost have to go looking for a whole new audience when you switch to a really different genre.
I have such a diverse following already with all the character work that I do that I've done a really good job of not ending up being pigeonholed. And I've had a lot of people now actually be like, oh, I'm excited for this because I don't like horror. And I think a lot of my followers are women. And I think that a lot of them, some stuff with horror is particularly triggering. So they're like, I'm not going to read that because I know I might end up in a headspace I don't want to. But I think with romantic comedy, also, I've been very open about the fact that I'm an actor. I've had experiences with people in the industry. I've been places, I've seen things that turned out really well, and I left. I think a lot of people relate to that story or have their own experiences, whether it's just doing like high school theater or they were professionals, that they're like, oh, I want to read this because this is something that I connect to. And I think also anytime you set something in New York, you're going to get an audience. It's right. It's the place we all want to end up until you end up there. And then you're like, I want to leave.
Yeah. And I guess, it makes sense. You have 142,000 followers on TikTok. So I guess it's different than an author who doesn't have that sort of following for something else, and they just have their readers of their horror, and now they say, oh, now I want to write romance, so now they're like the only people they can go to are their readers of their horror. But you have something that you built that was independent of your writing. The followers were independent, and thus you can mine that same pool of readers to get or those same pool of fans to get readers that are interested in romance versus horror. So that makes more sense.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I'm getting more people interested now in the book because it's a wider demographic. And I think that, it's that time of year where people are traveling and you maybe want to read something or take it on the bus or take it on the train that is maybe a little bit lighter. And I think that that's something that's also contributing to people being interested in it. So
because I would say the Wonderful Lady B was something, would you say, it's got a really interesting perspective. It's almost, I would call it like a work of feminism. Whereas would you say that?
Oh yeah. So I think the reason that I was inspired by it was, I think in every mythology, in every culture, there's the myth of the beautiful woman that can kill you for whatever reason. Every culture has that cautionary tale of there is a beautiful woman, but she's something else. She's a snake, she's a fox, she's a ghost, she's a spider, but she will like lure you out of your house and, eat you, kill you, take you to hell, whatever. And I was thinking Dracula was another big influence, but another one was Carmilla, who's the original Dracula. Yep. And, if you ever read the book, I think it's been fetishized a lot, but if you ever read the book, Carmilla's kind of sad. It's sort of a tragedy because she can't really ever connect with anybody. She's sort of doomed to be alone forever. But in pop culture, she's this you think of the Ingrid Pitt Carmilla, who is also tragic, but she's really sexy. And she's the scary bisexual vampire. And I started thinking what if that woman in white who everybody's afraid of, what if she didn't start out like that? And I think also a lot of women who are considered to be evil in history or not trustworthy or they're bimbos or sluts or whatever, they don't start out like that. There's always something that happens that creates the mythology around them that turns them into this creature. And so she's, the way that the Wonderful Lady B starts, her mythology begins with an assault. And she runs away from everything that she knew before because she can never go back. And there's a lot of stuff mixed in with it. There's survivor's remorse. There's Catholic guilt. There's, this thing happened to me, but I'm going to act like it never happened. But only now she's this monster. She needs to literally eat human flesh to survive. And it's that thing of this bad thing happened to me, but the more I shove it down and I don't embrace it, the more I am potentially dangerous and I might hurt someone that I care about. Whereas I think that she accepts it, and that journey over 100 years, she meets other people that are like her. And you connect with other people that have been through really bad things. And her kind of counterpart in volume 2 is also like a trauma survivor. And he's much older than her. But I think also, men are also taught when something bad happens to you, don't talk about it. You just keep going. You shove it down. You do whatever you need to do because you're the provider. You're in charge. You're the protector. So he really doesn't embrace it as much as she does. And they have conversations around how he's like, oh, I wish I could just be emotional and be kind of feral. In the end of the second book, he gets rid of the person that's, spoiler, but he gets rid of the person who's sort of been encouraging him to not heal because it's beneficial to that other person personally. But when you let go of, oh, I'm this bad person, I'm terrible, I'm bad, and you kind of embrace, well, I am bad and I do have to do this terrible thing in order to keep living, and I'm cursed with eternal life, so I can't die even if I want to. But what do I do when you have eternity, you know?
I find that that's so interesting. That's so deep. And I was thinking Medusa. There's another one for Medusa.
Yeah, there's always a myth of the female monster. And, you know, no one ever questions, like, how did she get that way? Like, why is she that way? Like, why is she monstrous when maybe she's just something that's part of nature? Or maybe something made her that way and she doesn't want to be this way. But what does she do, you know?
I love that. And then a completely different tack with In This Fair Chase.
Yeah, but I think the thing about In This Fair Chase is also dealing with an industry that tries to tell you all the time, you have to do this to be successful, especially if you're a woman. You know, I got told all the time, well, you have to do this and that and the other, and don't be difficult. Don't be, you know, oh, no one's going to want to work with you. And if you broach with the director or anyone in charge, I don't like this. Can we try this differently? Oh, she's the worst person to work with. Oh, I'll never touch her again. Like, oh, she's awful. She's terrible. And in the same breath, you'll have people telling you, you know, at like always 9 a.m. is when these auditions happening, that you're the ugliest thing on 2 legs and they don't want anything to do with you. But then they're also the person messaging you being like, hey, there's an opportunity coming up. So, you know, I could maybe make something happen for you. I had several of those moments. I've had, I think I was talking to somebody about this. The moment that I realized it wasn't going to happen was I was in New York and I was working on a project where I was sort of going out with the director, but not really, because like, oh, we can't, it wouldn't be professional. It wouldn't be perfect. And I was working on this project and I stayed late because I wanted to help him out. So I was doing other things that I was not required to do because my parts had been filmed, but I was holding the boom mic and moving the camera and helping out. And he was sitting in the back smoking with all of his friends. And they were talking about their next project. And they were like, oh, bro, this next one. Oh, it's going to be the one. Like, we're going to go to all the festivals and blah, 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 blah. And it was a horror movie. And it was a period horror movie. And I'm like,
oh yeah, that's
hey.
right up your alley.
And I'm like, this is leading up to, he's going to be like, oh, and we're going to have Lauren be in charge. Because I was like, I'm going to be living in the city when they're doing this next. I'm going to be right there. I'm going to be available 24/7. I will have no life and blah, blah, blah. And he like looks at his friends and he goes, yeah, so I think I'm going to call this other actress who's like, yeah, she's in another state and she's married, but like, I think we really got to use her. She's so hot. And they all started going, oh yeah, man. Oh yeah, man. She is hot. Like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I could literally be standing next to somebody and I will still not ever be good enough. There will always be somebody else out there. And this is for, you can be the most beautiful person in the industry. There will always be somebody else that you will be standing there waiting for someone to tell you, you're perfect for this. You're great. You're awesome. We're going to give you everything you ever wanted. And then there will be, oh yeah, but this person's younger. Oh, but this person's got lighter skin. Oh, but this person has better hair. Oh, but this person's thinner. Oh, but this person's thicker. And then you're going to get on the train and be like, fuck.
That's what
I'm sure it happens to men too, but it's such a personal attack, like as a woman. And, you know, then it's that thing of, well, so what happens when you do get your dream role? That's the whole thing about In This Fair Chase is, what if you get this amazing part and you do get everything you've ever wanted, but for so long you've been told all the things that are wrong with you. Are you going to be able to do the thing that you've always wanted to do? And also when someone comes along and really likes you, genuinely likes you and wants to connect with you and be close to you, are you going to even be emotionally ready for that because you've been told how gross and awful you are for so many years?
I find that fascinating. So it looks like there is a thread in this fair chase that actually stems right from The Wonderful Lady B. You have things to say that you can say in different genres.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I write about is kind of its identity. It's how people see themselves versus how the world sees you. It's about stuff that's happened in your past that you can't really let go of, but you have to because something has come along. And maybe that something is what you've closed yourself off to for years, but it's right there. And you can be happy and you can have what you want, but it won't be in the way that you think. Because that's been the through line of my whole life. And I think a lot of people are kind of in their own way a lot when it comes to being happy, because you're conditioned to think that happiness is this one thing, it's this one life. You have to stick to the path because somebody told you, or, well, this worked for this person that I follow, or this worked for this famous person that has resources that I've never had. And this is what I have to do. But the universe is telling you, hey, maybe you should consider that there's other stuff out there.
We are approaching the top of the hour, but that's what a bombshell thing to. I think that's a wonderful point.
Before we end, I know I ended it on a good one.
Yeah, that's amazing. Craig, before I ask Lauren to share where everyone can find her books and everything about her, do you have any final questions?
No, other than, I was just thinking when you were just talking about that, it's one of the things I like about self-publishing is you don't need someone else to tell you that you can do it. You don't need someone else to hire you, to pick you, to decide that you're the right person. You make those decisions. You take that power. You write the book that you want to write, and you sell it the way you want to sell it, which is exactly what you're doing. You don't have to put it on Amazon if you're ethically feeling that that's not the right move for you. Just because other people do that, you don't have to.
Right. And it's definitely been harder. That was something that's like, okay, you want to do it your own way. Well, you actually have to go do it now.
Right. But you can. Yeah. You don't need someone else's permission.
You can, and it won't look the way that you want, but you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I want of most anybody who's like, oh, I think I want to write, or I want to act, or I want to do this. Like, you can do it, but get ready for it not to look the way that you thought it would.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, though, because that's, I think, a great message.
Thank you guys for having me. This was really great.
Well, for everybody who is watching this on YouTube or listening on the podcast, Lauren, where can they go and find out more about you?
So all of my socials are at Glamour Possum. You can also find me at glamourpossum.com if you want to go support Nocturne. My books are also available for purchase on the Nocturne website, Nocturne Salem. And I make myself pretty easy to find. I've made sure it's Glamour Possum everything. So, type that in and something of mine will come up and you'll go down a rabbit hole that I do.
We're all about rabbit holes here. That is wonderful, Lauren. Well, we will make sure to pop a link to your website in the description down below. So if you're watching this and you want to go and check out everything that Lauren has to do, The Wonderful Lady B, the upcoming In This Fair Chase, scroll down there, click on that link and go and check it out. And while you're there, you will see that big empty comment box. So make sure you leave Lauren a comment and let her know how much you appreciated everything, the wisdom that she has shared with us today, because I've got a lot going away with that. And also there is that like button, the subscribe button, and the little bell icon. If you hit that, you'll get notified every time there is a new episode of Fully Booked, which of course there will be next week, same time, same channel. So until then, we will see you next. We'll see you next time. I kind of messed that one up there, but you know what I'm trying to say.